As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. I'm Ted Lowe, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Mr. Bobby Lewis.
Hey, man.
Hey. And Reggie Lewis. Reggie, welcome.
Yes, sir.
We're glad you're here, man.
I'm happy to be here.
And every week we just take a look at one question. We explore what we've done wrong mostly, what we hope to do right, what the experts say, and leave listeners with one pro move, just one simple thing that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Bobby, what is our question of the week?
What do I do when I get angry with my kids? As if that ever happens.
All right.
Yeah. Hasn't happened today.
I have a feeling this is going to be a
I've been here all
popular
day.
episode.
It's only 10 o'clock.
It has happened all day because I haven't seen them all day. I thought this will be a popular episode. Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we all want there to be peace in our homes, but inevitably there's not going to be peace in our homes, and that's okay. Like it's because we're all different people. We all want what we want, and sometimes dads we fall into this trap where we get our short fuse, we get angry. So what do? How do we handle that?
Right. What is something that you did that your dad, would probably get really angry? Any dad would have got angry at? You guys got any stories growing up where your dad just got so mad and they should have?
My mom and stepdad, they remarried, and we were moving into a new house, brand new neighborhood, didn't know anybody. We moved into this house. And within like 2 days, I have broken a neighbor's window.
Ooh, the neighbor's window.
Not even our window. It was the neighbor. Never met the woman before. I got to introduce myself. Hi, I'm the neighbor that just broke your window. And my dad was so upset. But I mean, it was an accident, but still, like that stuff happens all the time. And as a dad, you got to decide, am I going to blow up over this, or am I going to pay the $100 to fix my neighbor's window and introduce myself to the neighbor?
We're glad to be here. What about you?
So, I was, as a young kid, I was infamous for not actually taking baths or showers. I hated doing so.
And I was out of that.
I was like, well, now I'm all right. Take a whiff. No, I'm just, so I remember my dad would always be like, hey son, come on, go take a shower, go take a bath. And so I go into the bath, and for some reason, I didn't even run the water to even make it sound like I was attempting to take a shower. I had to be I was like 9 years old, right? And I come out just dry still with the towel. And he's like, you didn't take a shower? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And he got soaked because I lied. I was sticking to that lie.
How old are you at this point?
I was like 9 years old.
9 years old?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he got upset because he's like, you stink for one. Right? And you're lying and like you didn't turn on the water. And I'm like, oh shoot, I did.
Okay, this makes me feel better. You know what? Last week, my son is 8. Okay. And he was like, dude, you gotta go take a shower. Like, you're running around, you're all dirty. And I said, go get a bar of soap. And you know what that 8-year-old said to me? What is a bar of soap? and he was serious. Like, what do you mean? I didn't understand the question. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, I've never used one. I was like, you've been bathing yourself for years. He goes, I just use the conditioner. I put it on my head and I let it kind of get all over me and I get out.
The conditioner, not even the shampoo.
No, not even the shampoo.
No.
I was like, how do you not know? I had to walk in and hand him a bar of soap and say, this is a bar of soap. And so he was showering in the other room, and the whole time I could hear it falling. He goes, this is slippery.
This is slippery.
So it makes me feel better that like my kid's not super weird. You did the same thing.
Oh, I was super. Okay, I was the super.
Well, you're both weird. You're both weird.
This is slippery. Oh, that is fantastic. I've mentioned this several times on the podcast. It won't be shocked. I have ADHD. I had it long before it was cool to have it. And I had it when just people were like, would you just sit down? Pay attention and sit down. So my dad's question for me growing up a lot was, what were you thinking? Because I would just do stuff. And I remember the most frustrated times ever. I'd gotten in trouble for something else I had done. And he tells me to rake leaves that are really close to our house. And I thought, and they were kind of like, it's kind of going down into the basement. So there's these 2 retaining walls that are about 10 feet tall. So I thought, well, there's no need to rake this if I can just set them on fire.
Great idea.
Let me tell you something, friends. Those were some crunchy leaves, and we had ourselves a fire.
Oh, man.
And pre-cell phone days, and I'm trying to track my dad down.
You were just being innovative.
Oh, he was
furious, I'm sure.
And he should have been. In his defense, like he was way more patient with me than I would have been with me. I'm so glad I didn't have a me. God spared me from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've all had moments now as parents. We were talking about when we were kids, how we made our dads mad. But as parents, I think we all kind of have those moments that creep up now, like the bar of soap situation last week.
Yep.
What are some ineffective responses? What are some things that you have done that didn't make the situation any better?
You got littles. How's that work with littles?
Oh my goodness. Being led by your emotions. Led by your emotions, and you can't fight fire with fire. You especially with your children.
You can burn leaves with fire.
You can burn leaves though,
and your house down,
and everything with it, right? Yeah. But being led by your emotions. So that is the most ineffective way where I've seen, because I try to correct. Well, in the moment, I'm trying to correct out of my emotions versus out of what they've done. That has prompted me to be angry. And it doesn't go well for me, and it does not go well for them when I lead that way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Maybe this is a personal question. You guys yell more than you want to?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're yelling and you're like, why am I not stopping? And you just keep yelling.
Yeah. But I think that's a go-to sometimes. You get angry and so volume solves the problem, right? Well, we know it doesn't, but it's just a natural thing. You just kind of, I want to be heard. You need to pay attention. So we get louder. I know I do it for sure.
Yeah. I wasn't a yeller. I'm not a yeller, but I think it can be just as ineffective to handle it the way I did, because, words are important to me, and I write and speak and all those different things. And I can craft my words really quickly. And that is not a good skill to have. That is a gift I wish I could trade in a lot of times, because that's what I would do. And that's when, again, we talked about apologies on the last episode. So that for me, very ineffective way is crafting words that you later regret.
Yeah. I got a story about yelling. It wasn't at my kids, but my kids were present. So we went out to like this little, frozen yogurt type of place near our house. And, we were doing fine. It was one of those places you walk up and you order and then you sit at the picnic table or whatever. And so we had our little frozen yogurt and we're getting back in the car. And as we were getting in the car, there was a bunch of teenagers that were near our car, maybe like 2 lengths away. And they were cursing up a storm and they were just being loud and like yelling and throwing stuff. And it was bothering me, not because I thought they were going to do anything weird or something, but it was so close to my kids. I didn't want my kids hearing this because my kids are little. I didn't want them, hearing all sorts of nasty stuff that they were saying. And so I don't know what I did. I just snapped and I screamed at these kids. It was so out of character for me because I don't normally do that out in public. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Stop. You see these little kids here? Like that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then it almost surprised me. And I got in the car and it was quiet in the car. And my kids, I don't think they knew what to do because I was angry at these people and I was yelling. And so on the ride home, after a couple of minutes, I was like, I got to say something here because it's oddly quiet. Yeah. And I was like, so what did you guys think about that? Daddy probably made a mistake. I shouldn't have yelled. And they were like, yeah, that was scary. Like I've never seen you do that to people before. And I did it out of a good reason. Like I didn't want them to, say something bad that my kids would hear. Yeah. But it affected them. And so I was thinking, if this affected them so much that I was yelling at a stranger, how much more is it going to affect them if I do it to them?
Wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that really shaped how much yelling or how do I handle that angry moment? I won't forget that.
Yeah, to add what you said, Ted, about crafting your words, an experience that we've had in our household, and it took us a while to understand this experience, which was, when your kids do something and you say the words, "What's wrong with you?" Right. Imagine that. And then imagine your child asking themselves, and you hear the self-talk of what's wrong with me? And using those words out of anger or out of that's the go-to. Why is that the go-to in my household? I don't know about anyone else's, but why is that the go-to? What am I trying to get my children to understand in that moment? What's wrong with them? This is how I got to do the right thing, and whatever the case may be. So that goes along with making sure I take the emotion out of the situation.
Right.
Like I have a level of self that I don't want to get to and that I shouldn't allow anybody else to get me to, especially our kids, which they can. They break a TV, which my son has done. Yeah. And, you know, but ironically, I didn't discipline or yell at him for that. And my wife was like, what?
What?
You know, that's
the
a
big things,
$400 thing. Why didn't you?
Yeah.
But then it's like you drop the, you drop the blueberries all over the floor, right? That you just bought. And you're like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? You know?
And you're snap right to it. And, you use the word afraid with your kids, Bobby. And I think sometimes, as dads and even as husbands, like you think how much, especially when they're little, how much bigger than we are physically. Yeah. And then we add to our size that volume, that deep volume, that angry volume. That's got to be super scary. And I don't think anybody listening goes, hey, I want my kids to obey out of fear. No. And I think too, with one motivator for me, I heard early on, and maybe one of the reasons it helped me keep being a yeller is like you save that voice for emergencies. You save that when something's going to hurt them or, safety. Yeah. So that was one of the biggest things to go, let's keep that. And I remember using that voice with someone else because there was a car driving too fast in our neighborhood. And you guys, before I knew what I had done, I jumped in the road, throw my hand up and went, stop. And my kids are playing. And my oldest son, who's very logical, a little bit, Dad, he wasn't going that fast. And I thought, not in your mind. Thank you, 9-year-old who had more. But it thinks too, it's like saving that voice is an important thing.
Yeah, and when we use it in the wrong way, it's certainly ineffective. Like I think we fall into this trap of thinking if we're loud, they'll just get it. Yeah, right. No, you're just being loud. Right. And your anger is then spilling out onto them. And I don't think that's ever good. That's definitely one of the ineffective ways. Another way that I think that we're ineffective with our anger is we just kind of ignore the behavior. We get angry and we're like, I'm just going to walk away, which is fine. Like you don't want to blow up or anything. But if you just ignore the behavior altogether and you don't actually come back and address it, you're just going to be angry again. That's next week,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a right way to navigate anger. I mean, and I don't think we're getting at like, hey, don't be angry. Like who can stop
it's a natural human emotion.
Right?
You can't tell people not to be something that's naturally occurring.
Right. It's the how do you apply it and use it almost to a productive way and not allow it to use you in an unproductive way.
Or sometimes we can go flying in there and giving consequences that we never going to withhold. I tell you what, you got here late on the curfew. You're not going out for 6 weeks. Yeah. My wife used to say this with her friends. They would take the kids out on little play dates or whatever. And one of the moms was really quick to say, hey, if you misbehave, we're going to go home. And finally they said to the friend, you're punishing yourself. Stop saying we're going to go home. You tell the kids they're going to have to sit out. And so I think it's those things of, and she was doing great. Like she was following up with this, the consequences. But at the same time, it's like, okay, take a beat before you start giving out consequences. You punish yourself or you're going, okay, that was too large. Yeah. Not that we ever do anything's too large as guys,
well, I mean,
right?
you were talking about threatening consequences. If you're going to do it, you probably should follow through with it too, because they're going to learn like we're actually just getting away with whatever we want. And dad, mom, whoever's getting angry. But if you don't follow through on some of these, positive, consequences, what are they going to learn? They're going to learn I can just get to do whatever I want. Yeah. It's kind of delayed obedience. I've heard that term a lot. I'm going to count to 3 and we give you until 3 to, kind of fall in line or do whatever we asked you to do. That's not effective. Making up consequences and not following through, that's not effective either. Those are weapons against you as a dad if you're trying to be an effective one.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And Ted, I like what you brought up. You said the fear kind of factor, and Bobby, you said it too, where maybe this anger that we lead with will produce this fear, which will cause our children to fall in line. And I don't believe so, right? The reason being is because fear is not honor. They'll fear you to a point where they're like, you know what, I'm out of the house. I don't fear dad anymore. And you don't even want that.
Say that again.
So fear is not honor. So if your children are acting out of fear, that doesn't mean that they're honoring you. So if it's the curfew is 10 o'clock, oh, I'm so scared. I have to be back in at 10. Now, what happens later in life where you're not there to cause that fear or implement that fear? Then you have to replace that fear with honor. right? Like the reason why you're not going to stay out that late, or the reason why you're going to do this or that, is because you honor what your dad, what your mom has said.
Oh, that's good.
And that honor brings up a level of relationship between you and your child.
It's so good, because I think when they're little, you can control with your anger.
Sure, yeah.
And then they get teenagers, and if you've been loud the whole time, they're not listening. And like you said, they may be afraid, but they're not honoring. And if they're not honoring you when they leave, you don't want to have a relationship. They're not going to want to have a relationship from a dad they're afraid of.
No, not at all.
I think anger is a natural wedge. No matter if it's between you or your kids or your spouse or your coworkers or whoever. Like if you're constantly getting angry, I wouldn't be around you.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be around Reggie if he was constantly cursing me out or something. Not that he does that, often. But,
under my breath.
Oh, good.
just lunch break.
It's just when anger doesn't bring people closer together.
No.
And I think as a parent, my goal is to have a relationship with my kids when they're 30, 40, 50 years old. Not just when they're 7 and I, take care of their every need.
Yeah.
And
that's the goal.
My goal is to obviously we're going to get angry and it's okay. But my goal is to handle it well so that 30, 40, 50 years from now, when, I want them to come bring grandkids to see me and I want them to bring great grandkids to see me. They want to, because they have fond memories and I didn't blow up on them all the time.
Yeah. It makes me think of, thinking about the long term and the future of the relationship. It's like my 3-year-old right now. He can do things that makes me angry, but he's 3. I pick him up.
Wow.
Look, you're right here. You can throw the tantrum, but I have you in my arms. Now my 8-year-old, not picking her up while she might throw a tantrum or be upset.
Sure heard you.
So, right. She's in my back. I can't move. So, where I try to have the same mindset where I'm not getting out of, again, myself or out of my personality and being angry with the 3-year-old, because the 8-year-old, I have to navigate the same way. And so when they're 10, when they're 12, when they're 18, I have to be in the mindset of all right, let me address it as I did when they were 3. But then when they were 3, I could control them.
Right.
I could move them. And
so we talked about a lot of things that don't work, obviously. And I think all dads know what doesn't work because we've experienced that firsthand. But what are some things that do work that we should try to do as dads that really will make these angry moments, not last as long, but also have something productive come out of them?
I think it starts with us saying, why am I doing this? Because I think every dad that's listening goes, I get that. I know anger's not great. Most of the time we regret it. We have to do damage. I mean, my line with married couples all the time, and I think it's true as a dad, is, saying you're sorry is great. Not needing to is better. Yeah. And so I wish I had to apologize less. And so what's going on in somebody's brain? Because if somebody's listening right now, hopefully they're not in the middle of anger with their kid, but you're sitting here going, okay, what's happening? And just from a brain perspective, is when we're triggered by our kid, it triggers this same part of our brain that's triggered if, we were to, put our hand on a hot stove. There's this instant thing called the amygdala, and you move your hand off the stove, which is very efficient, and we want it, but it's too efficient sometimes as dads and husbands. And so your frontal lobe, this part that we're using right now that is saying, here's what I want long-term for my kid, it's out to lunch. And so there's this thing, and we do these things and we go, where did that come from? So I think the thing that we've got to do more than anything is we got to slow down. You can always go say something, but it's really difficult to go in reverse. Yeah. And so I think one of the clearest applications of this, as a Christian, I think, Scripture is always very clarifying and helpful and gives application. But I think even if somebody's listening right now, I'm not a Christian, I don't know how I feel about that. I promise you, this verse is backed by research too, but it's James 1:19 and 20. And it's be quick to listen,
slow to speak,
and slow to become what? And I think it's interesting that it only uses the word become when it comes to anger. Become angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm triggered, my first thing is not, hey, tell me more. Yeah. Tell me more. I'm not quick to slow down my words. I'm quick to give them, and then to become angry. So if we just got to slow down. I mean, I'm telling you, if you give yourselves, because it takes about 8 seconds for your amygdala to come online. It takes longer for it to cool, but your frontal lobe to come back. It's just to take deep breaths and go, I'm going to throw a pause right here. the most regrettable moments for me as a dad and as a husband is times I didn't pause.
Oh yeah.
That's big.
Well, the whole world begs for you to speak before listening. Almost, you go to Twitter, whatever, X, whatever it's called now, or Facebook or whatever. And it's almost like you're being prompted to like spit out your opinion as fast as possible, right? You're rewarded by just giving your thoughts as quickly as you possibly can. Rewarded with scare quotes. Like you're not actually benefiting yourself by just spouting off quickly. And we do this with kids too. Like if they've made me angry, if they've tried to burn the house down or whatever they're doing, like you can get super mouthy and talk right away, or you can take that biblical principle to heart and be like, okay, take a second, just calm down. Okay, let's talk about this. You know, why did you think burning the leaves was a good idea? Okay. I'm not saying it was a bad idea or good idea, but just explain it to me. I want to know more about what you were thinking, small developing mind. And then instead of getting super mad and yelling at you for something you may not have thought was a bad idea, let's talk about why you can make a better idea next, or do something, safer next time.
Yeah. And with the slowing down, great point. When I slow down, I ask myself, when I speak, when I'm going to discipline or whatever the case may be, will I be doing so out of love? Because if I'm not doing it out of love, I shouldn't be doing it at all. Going back to scripture, the Bible says the Lord disciplines those who he loves. And so I always ask myself, like when my children have made me angry, before I go into disciplining, I have to know that I love them. Because let's be completely honest with it. There has been times where I do react in anger and have choice words. And I'm like, I would never, if I'm in the right mind, I would never say those words because I love this person. So why would I look at them and say, what's wrong with you? Why would I look at them and say, like, why do you always do this? Right. Labeling them. And we've talked about that. And just because you can tear down children so quick, you can tear them down and they're resilient. Right. But you don't know in the aftermath what's going to stick with your children. You don't know 18 years from now what they're going to remember what you said. And so, when I do lead, when I do speak, I try to slow down, which you guys both talked about, and just say and move with love. That doesn't mean that I won't raise my voice. It doesn't mean that I won't discipline, but well, and I think all dads listening to this or watching this are going to have to make an intentional choice to pause and slow down. It's not a natural thing. Like we've shared examples of how we've yelled. We've had other people yell at us. It's going to be a conscious decision to force yourself to not blow up in the moment and to just pause for a second. That's not going to be easy. I mean, that's hard, but I mean, I think that's for our good. Yeah.
Bite that tongue. I mean, just literally people, I need to bite my tongue. Yeah, absolutely. If you need to bite your tongue, I mean, part of ADHD, which, I have, it's impulse control. Like you, there's not a big gap. That's why my dad was always saying, what were you thinking? Because I wasn't. And I always say, hey, if I can learn to slow it down, anybody can learn to slow it down. But I think it's just, you allow yourself to get out of the emotion. You allow them to get out of the emotion. It gives you chance. We talked about another episode about getting wisdom. I mean, people, I don't know what our need to so immediately discipline, like right in this moment. I don't want to miss this moment. Well, you're actually going to get a better moment when you let it slow down. Now, granted, again, loud voice, right? Like this just happened safety wise. There's no gap there. There's buddy, come here for the, I mean, you can still breathe 2 seconds. Do you understand what just happened? You were not watching when you were stepping out into the street. My dad used to grab me by the arm all the time. Like he would literally have to pull me out on the street way too long into my childhood. He did it last week. It was really scary. But I think that's one of those things that go, if you could, okay, we're going to be, slow to speak, but also quick to listen. Just want to be understood. Like, don't we all want to be understood to say, okay, like you were saying earlier, help me understand, like what was going on. Not help me understand what was going on. Just to say, okay, what was happening.
Yeah. The way that you respond to anger will leave a mark on your child. Do you want it to be a positive or negative one?
That's a great one. That's great.
Because they're going to remember these moments. Like I remember my dad in the moment when I broke that window, like he was upset. He could have screamed, but he didn't. And we had a long conversation later on. And he's like, listen, that was dumb. Like, pay attention to what you're doing. Right. He could have yelled and screamed, but he didn't. And so I have a positive memory of that experience. Had he yelled and screamed, maybe I'd be saying something different right now. But he didn't. And in that moment, I'm glad he paused,
Because if we get angry, we are angry about the behavior. But if our anger is larger than behavior, they're just seeing the anger and not their behavior.
Yeah.
They're just watching our reaction, especially teenagers.
Okay.
Like they are begging for you to over respond so they can go, what are you doing? You're losing your way to go. Can you believe Dad said that? And they're constantly saying, Dad yelled at me. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. I did not yell. So they're already exaggerating your response. So when you dial it back, it gives them more of an opportunity to hear what you're saying instead of Dad acting like a jerk.
Yeah. This is going to be something that we put into practice every year they're in our homes, and that's good because that means that, we're listening, we're attentive to their needs, we're paying attention to everything that they do, and we're reacting appropriately. We just have to make sure that we're practicing that pause.
Not getting the, oh my gosh, my dad is going to kill me, right? Response. Yeah. And instead getting the, oh my gosh, I need to go to my dad.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to depend on how you react to them doing anything that's going to cause you to get angry.
I'm going to do that again than I did earlier, but that was just gold. Say that again.
So not getting the, oh my gosh, my dad is going to kill me reaction from your child, and getting the, oh my gosh, I need to go to my dad.
Love it.
Ooh, that's so good. And that's what we want for our kids, right? He's there for me. I knew that there might be a consequence. I knew that, but I know my dad's there. Isn't that the goal for them?
Yeah.
That's huge. And I've got to give my dad a shout out with this to go, I look back now and he wasn't a perfect dad, and he'll tell you that, but he was a gentle one.
Yeah.
He was, and I was so frustrating, you guys. I was a hot mess all over the place, and I frustrated teachers and so many people, but my dad would remain calm, and he never... One of the greatest gifts that he would give me is never hurt me. I can't tell you one mean thing that my dad ever said to me. Frustration, sure. Mean, never. And so what a gift. So you guys, this is so important. This is great. So what's our pro move, Bobby? What's our pro move?
Pro move of the week. This is something we do every single show. And it's just one thing that you can implement in your life this week with your kids to help you be a better dad, grow your relationship with them. Pro move this week is be ready to pause the next time that your child makes you angry. And it may happen today, it may happen next week. It's going to happen because this is just the natural relationship that we have with our kids. Prepare yourself to pause. Think about that for the next time it comes up.
That's good. I love that. Well, you guys, I think we can say, hey, what's the dream of this? If we get better at this, it's less regret, right? It's less regret, less damage, less counseling bills for all of us.
Well, and I'm thinking, get good at this now so that your kids want to hang out with you later.
That's the dream.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
It is a normal emotion, no doubt about it. We're not saying that, but we have more control than we think. We do. Thank you guys. I learned so much every time from you guys. But most of all, thanks those of you who are listening. We know you've got a lot of other options, and we're really hoping that today it's left you encouraged and feeling like you can be more of the dad that you want to be. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.